All right, this video is going to cover the chapter Who Rules, and apologies if you end up hearing a dog. Sorry. So the first thing you're going to do is get into my class, which you should only have one social studies class for you, but we're looking at this history picture. This is in Canvas. Then this is what you should see. And we are going to be going into chapter Who Rules. Now, I have already done this during class, so some of this is going to look a little bit different. What I want to go over is the due date up here this is the date that this assignment needs to be turned in and completed for you not to lose any points on this assignment. Availability. Now this is it. You'll be able to access this assignment from August 18th to August 27th. So that gives you some days between August 24th and 27th where the assignment will be counted late if it's turned in after the 24th, but you can still turn it in with some deduction. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and you guys are, you'll end up scrolling down to probably the bottom if you haven't done this, and you'll see a button and it says take quiz, or start quiz. This is not going to be counted as a quiz. This is going to be counted as classwork homework, and classwork homework, and you'll be able to go back up into this reading as we're going along. So I'm going to click take quiz again, and you should click either take quiz or start quiz, whatever it says. So I'm going to start with the first question. I'm going to go down to question number 1. And I'm going to read this. And this is really how I would like you to go through and do any chapters and readings. So first we're going to go to question 1, and we're going to read this so that as we go through, once we find the answer, as we get there, then we'll know what it is. Most of the time, my readings are going to be in order. All right, so a government in which a person has all the power. And our options are republic, oligarchy, autocracy, and democracy. So I'm going to go up, and I might even look up here. You'll see that you might even get some answers through here. All right. Someone's got to be in charge. If you compared all governments in the world, you would find one thing in common. Someone is in charge. The question is who? There are many different forms of government. Some have one leader who has all the control. Others give power to the people. Here are some forms of government that exist or have existed in the world. Me, myself, and I. An autocracy is a government in which one person has all the power. There are 2 main types of autocracy, a monarchy and a dictatorship. So this is our answer to number 1. I'm going to scroll back down. And if you'll notice, I didn't read everything. I am not skipping through and just trying to find the answers. I am reading it as I'm going along, and then I will click it as I find it. This is the way you can make sure that you, 1, get the important things, but also get those details that will make these different concepts make sense. You'll get the examples, so it's not as of a idea instead of something that does really exist in the world. Question, and another thing, if you're looking at yours, these are often shuffled. So you do not want to go through and be like, oh, click the third one, that's what I'm going to click. You want to be specific, because autocracy might show up here or down here. It could show up anywhere. All right. A king or queen rules the country. So democracy, monarchy, theocracy, oligarchy. So we're going to go up, back to where we left off, right here. In a monarchy, a king or queen rules the country. The king or queen is known as a monarch. So that is our answer to this next one. And knowing that a king or queen is a monarch is kind of important in the sense that now you understand where monarchy, the name, actually comes from, instead of why isn't it kingarchy or queenarchy or something like that. And our next one is a form of government where there's one leader that has absolute control over citizens' lives. Now I'm going to finish the monarchy part. So, monarchs usually come to power through their family line. The current king or queen's oldest child becomes the next king or queen. In some monarchies, especially those in historical times, the monarch held all the power and had the final say over government. In modern times, monarchs usually share power with other parts of the government. Often they are also subject to the country's constitution. So if there are laws and other parts, then those laws may apply to them. A dictatorship is a form of government where one leader has absolute control over citizens' lives. If there is a constitution, the dictator has control over that too, so it doesn't mean much. Although other parts of the government may exist, such as courts or lawmaking body, these branches always do what the dictator wants them to do. They do not represent the citizens. So, complete control with dictatorship. Make sure you don't accidentally click democracy. All right. Citizens hold the political power. I'm going to go back up. And I finished that. Okay. Power to the people. In a democracy, citizens hold political power. There are two fundamental types. So that's our answer. Citizens elect leaders to represent their rights and interests in government. So elect leaders. In a representative democracy, citizens elect leaders to represent their rights and interests in government. The elected leaders or representatives do the day-to-day work of governing the country. So I'm going to come back down and select representative democracy and read the next question. Directly involved in the day-to-day work of the governing country. And I did not finish reading the rest of this, so I'm going to do that. So they consider the issues, work to find solutions, pass laws, and do all of the other things necessary to keep a country going. Citizens hold the ultimate power, though, because if they don't like what their representatives are doing, they can vote in new ones. Just so you know, this is what the United States essentially has overall. There are some direct democracies as well, if I get to this. Right. In a direct democracy, there are no representatives. Citizens are directly involved in the day-to-day work of governing the country. Citizens might be required to participate in lawmaking or act as judges, for example. The best example of this was in the ancient Greek city called Athens. Most modern countries are too large for direct democracy to work. So this is for smaller groups. It works well for like a class, something like that. All right, next one. A small group of people has all the power. All right, going back up. We, ourselves, and us. In an oligarchy, and I did put the pronunciation here because a lot of people have problems pronouncing this word, and most of it is just if you sound it out, then you should be okay. So oligarchy. This isn't a ch sound, it is a k sound. So now you can be confident that you're saying it correctly. So in an oligarchy, a small group of people has all the power. Oligarchy is a Greek word that means rule by a few. Sometimes this means that only a certain group has political rights, such as members of one political party, one social class, or one race. For example, in some societies, only noble families who owned land could participate in politics. An oligarchy can also mean that a few people control the country. But let's go down and get that answer in. So, oligarchy. Because this next one, I know that's coming up, operates much like a dictatorship, except that several people share power. So it's like a group of little Hitlers. Alright. An oligarchy can also mean that a few people control the country. For example, a junta is a small group of people, usually military officers, who rule a country after taking it over by force. A junta often operates much like a dictatorship, except that several people share the power. On junta. A government that recognizes God or a divine being as the ultimate authority. Alright. Religious rule. A theocracy is a government that recognizes God or a divine being as the ultimate authority. Theo is a Greek word that means God. In a theocracy, religious law is used to settle disputes and rule the people. A theocracy can also be a democracy, dictatorship, monarchy, or just about any other kind of government. For example, the Republic of Iran recognizes Islamic law, but Iran's citizens vote to elect their leaders. Modern theocracies are usually found in countries where the population is strongly religious. I would also add, most of this is really in the Middle East, and they incorporate religion into the laws specifically. So even though there are definitely a large religious population in the United States, there are very specific things in the laws that say we are secular, we separate religion and government, and we do that so that everybody can choose their own religion. If you say religion is part of it, then you're kind of stuck with that religion. And no one can particularly choose which one works or not. So just imagine if you were to go into a country that is a different religion from yours and being forced to have that religion or go by those laws, even though it's not something you believe. Once you kind of turn that on its head and you put yourself in the position of a religion you disagree with, then it becomes more clear why we have that separation. And we are going to go through a lot of historical examples of how some groups tried to force a religion on others, and that caused a lot of conflict. So the benefits really of the United States are that you can, and some other countries obviously, but to us, is that you can choose what religion you want to follow, and then the laws are kind of specifically made to deal with equality and not taking religion into the written law. Alright, so let's, after all that, we'll go back down. So we're going to choose theocracy. And our last one is nobody is in control, or everyone is. So, this is our last one. Rule by none. In anarchy, nobody is in control, or everyone is, depending on how you look at it. Sometimes the word anarchy is used to refer to an out-of-control mob. When it comes to government, anarchy would be one way to describe the human state of existence before any governments developed. It would be similar to the way animals live in the wild, with everyone looking out for themselves. Today, people who call themselves anarchists usually believe that people should be allowed to freely associate together without being subjected to any nation or government. A lot of students will compare anarchy to the movie The Purge, where for a time, essentially, you do not have to follow the laws. And this is essentially what it is, except for you're not specifically going out and seeking out other people, in a sense. Some examples of this right now, a modern example is in Somalia. If you want to look up that country, it will give you a large amount of insight into what anarchy actually looks like The Wild West, before we start looking at sheriffs, would be another example. So there is kind of an understanding of, hey, you shouldn't kill me because then I'll kill you. So it's kind of that eye for an eye in a sense. Time, that's kind of like what's agreed upon if you're dealing with a more stable anarchy. If your anarchy's out of control, then you've got people who are just running around doing whatever. Some people will get into groups and they will go off and set fires to a bunch of houses because they essentially feel like it. And because they're a larger group, it's harder to control the shall we say, either revenge or vengeance or being able to counter what that group is doing. So it can definitely, and that's kind of what's happening in Somalia, is you're getting different groups who are very powerful, very violent, and you can't kind of lash back because you don't have the weapons, you don't have the numbers, the strength isn't there. So anarchy can get very iffy, and a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, freedom, I can do whatever I want, but with that freedom, you have to protect your house, you have to protect the people that live there, you have to protect your belongings, so someone is always going to have to be there. You're not going to have the police force, so if somebody steals from you, then too bad. You could go and try to retrieve it, you'd be allowed to do that, and that would be fine, but you put yourself in harm's way then, or maybe you don't mind that. Either way, there's very specific consequences, and nothing is stopping you from doing anything, but also nothing is stopping someone else. So it's at that point you have to start thinking about, is it important that I survive? A lot of people think that they're invincible, that they can go around and they will be the most powerful person during a state of anarchy, but then in the end, they really aren't. And that is how you run into problems like that. All right, so we've got anarchy, click that, and then you'll hit submit. Now, one of the most important parts that I care about is going to be this KEP score. Now, I put at the top immediately what you need to get to have a decent grade. The KEP score is going to average. So let's say you went through this, you didn't really read it, you didn't put in effort, and you got a 2 out of 10, right? And I'm going to pull up a calculator kind of to make a point with this, because I have had people who will take this thing 80, well, not specifically this one's pretty easy, but some other ones like 80 times because they decided they were just going to click and they were bored. So let's say you get a 2 out of 10, which is a 20. And then you're like, oh no, I need to go back. That was a bad idea. So to get this average, all right, we're going to add 2, which is your first grade, plus 10, all right, equal that. And now because you have 2 numbers, you're dividing it by 2. So divide by 2. Now you end up with a 6 out of 10. So you tried it twice and you got a 6 out of 10. And so now I would say to you, you need to do it again because you need to have higher than a 7. So let's say then that you're trying it a third time. So you've got a 2 plus 10 plus 10 because you did good 2 times, right? Equals, and now we're going to divide by 3. Now you have a 7.33, whatever. It'll stop probably here, so you'll end up with a 7.33. And again, so now you've got 100 twice, but that 1, 2, that 20% is going to pull you down. And every time you add this, it's not going to go up a lot. So let's say you wanted to get higher than that. So 2 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. So now we're going to have taken 3 times because we're like, no, I don't want a 7. I want something higher. So equals, now we're going to divide by 4. Now you have an 8. So now you got 100 3 times, but that 2 is still putting you with an 8. A lot of people will start doing this and not going back and getting the 100. They will, let's say, get the 2 out of 10. Then they go again and they'll get a 6. Then they'll go again and get a 9. So this is going to be 3 different times. All right. So now I'm going to divide this by 3 because I took it 3 times, right? Now I only have a 5.666. Now for me to do this again, I'm going to have to add another 10 and divide by this time 2. And so now it's going up extremely slowly. So if you do mess up one time, you need to get the full 100 to be able to get anywhere. If you're doing these lower numbers, it will dilute it. It will take more for you to get it to go higher. So you need to be careful with this. It's really better to try to get above this score the first time. And it may take a minute to read everything and feel confident about your answers, but it's better than doing a chapter 80 times, because I'm not going to let you get by with a 6 out of 10, because that's a 60%, and that's a D. And once that all stacks up, now you're going to have a problem. Your grade is not going to be okay. Most of the time when I put a KEP score up here, it's to get you to have a C or higher, or normally a B or higher. So this is going to be very important to make sure that you make this happen. If you make this happen, then you'll essentially be pretty good and should get a good grade in my class, especially since you can go back into the reading. This is not memorizing. All right, I'm going to stop here so this video doesn't get any longer. But that is our Who Rules chapter.